General Paul Moga. I'm the 3rd Air Force Commander for USAFE and Africa in Europe.
I'm André Steur. In my day job, I'm the commander of the Royal Netherlands Air Force, but right now I'm a student pilot here at Luke, learning about the F-35.
Colonel Dave Berkland, I'm the 56th Fighter Wing Commander here at Luke Air Force Base, where we train F-35 pilots from our allies and partners like the Netherlands, as well as where we send our graduates out to combatant commands and like 3rd Air Force, a numbered Air Force that's assigned to a combatant command in a European command.
I don't think that there's any doubt that the F-35 represents the future of tactical fighter aviation in Europe for the NATO alliance. If you fast forward the clock, we are projecting right now that by the early portions of the next decade, so the early 2030s, there'll be almost 600 F-35s permanently stationed inside of Europe, primarily flown by members of the alliance, and only about 50 or 60 of those are going to be United States. So the F-35, its capabilities, is absolutely critical to the future defense and deterrence efforts across the entire continent of Europe.
Yeah, I would agree with that, and it's just like Max said, I think the F-35 is going to be the workhorse all around the world, but also in Europe, with hundreds of them being flown by partners. And it somewhat resembles, I think, what we've seen over the last decades with the F-16, and I think it provides a tremendous opportunity to work with a common platform, to be interoperable with each other, because no matter where you are right now in the world, it's a very demanding scenario, whether that's in the Indo-Pacific or in Europe. And I think we need to do everything to maximize our buck per airplane and get every inch of air power out of every F-35 that's flying around the world. And I think you can only do that together. I live by the creed, alone you go faster, but together you go further, and I think that's the bottom line of the whole thing.
Absolutely. So from my perspective, I mean, obviously a little more tactically oriented. The F-35 is a 5th generation fighter with stealth attributes as well as sensor fusion, is a tremendous platform. But the interoperability aspect of the F-35, like General Steur mentioned, is really game changing. So for example, yesterday I flew in a Dutch F-35 on our ramp. My wingman was an American instructor pilot in a US F-35. And I've had experiences like that, and I know that in Europe they do it all the time. They go out and fly together, and it's seamless because the airplane is designed to be interoperable in that manner. And when you combine that with the fact that we train together, and in fact, those of us who went through Euro-NATO Joint Jet pilot training, we have been training together since we first were trying to get our wings. And so that's very powerful. I have friends here that I went through pilot training with that are flying as instructor pilots on this base, not Americans, from different allies. So that's a powerful enabler as well that brings a lot of capability.
And I truly think that the sky is the limit if we put our will against it. We've seen some great examples as well in the past with the F-16. For example, the weapons school in Europe, which we started with Denmark, Norway, Belgium, and the Netherlands. And if we let our captains and majors go at it, then, like I said, the sky is the limit. When I went to weapons school in 2001, I could be as a Dutch pilot in a Belgian F-16 with a Norwegian crew chief, with a Danish engine in the back, and we would share everything. And that was the ultimate goal, I think, of interoperability and being able to operate together. So, and I foresee that with the F-35 as well. There's a tremendous opportunity out there.
And you're right, sir. And we've come a long way in a relatively short period of time, I think, with F-35 interoperability in Europe. Absolutely. And it's not just interoperability in the air with pilots flying similar tactics and knowing what one another are doing to solve a tactical problem. It's also interoperability on the ground with our maintainers and our sustainers. An example of that, I'm sure you're aware, is several months ago, for the first time in Europe, a flight of F-35s landed at an airfield in Norway. Yep. They were turned from start to finish by Norwegian maintainers. 5-10 years ago, that would have been unheard of, to allow members from a different country to turn your fifth generation prized possession stealth fighter. You wouldn't even be able to get within 20 feet of it, let alone actually turn the jet and get it airborne again. So we've come a long way on the ground in the air in Europe, but there's still a lot of work left to be done.
Yeah, true. But I think the right focus is there, with General Hacker as well, fully pushing forward with agile combat deployment, so we can basically launch any jet from any country, from any base. And it doesn't matter whoever launches it. So I fully agree with you, Max, that it's equally important that we are interoperable on the ground and in the air.
I think personally, number one, from what I've seen over the last about 3 weeks here, going through F-35 requalification, training has come leaps and bounds since I left the training program about 5 years ago out of Eglin. And one of the things that I'm most impressed by is how laser focused the instructors and subsequently the students are on focusing on a high-end fight. We have gotten away from doing the easy tactics, fighting the easy scenarios, and things, which is a hats off to this organization, Ajax. The level of fidelity and focused on the high-end fight here is just eye-opening. Like I said, it is leaps and bounds beyond what I left 5 years ago, and it's really a testament to, I think, I'll speak on your behalf, the dedication of your instructor cadre to bring things to the next level in the training environment, so pilots aren't showing up at their first operational unit not having any idea what they've gotten themselves into.
I agree, and because I'm kind of new, and I'm just going through my, somewhat of a requalification in the jet too. So I've been flying with the instructor pilots as well, and that has been my observation as well. Not only are they focused on the high-end fight, but the level of instruction is phenomenal, and that goes for. I've been flying in the 308, so I've been flying with the Dutch and the Danes, and I flew last week with Bear Kuiper, who's one of your weapons school graduates, and it was phenomenal. I mean, I can't imagine a better instructor pilot than him, and that's been my experience with all the allies. So I think, to answer your question, first of all, I think you got to start training together early. So Shepherd, Euro NATO Joint Jet Pilot Training that I alluded to is a great place to start, and you build those relationships, you establish trust. And then you can move, as General Steur said, you can go a lot farther with that trust together. And then keep training together. Keep training like we are here at Luke. When I went through F-16, basic course 24 years ago, it was just with American instructor pilots, American students. Completely different experience. I think it's a huge enabler to be able to train together here for the high-end fight, like General Moga said.
I fully agree what you just said, Ajax, and I want to piggyback that you can't start early enough, I think, on working together and to cultivate an atmosphere of professionalism, share the same values, be somewhat like-minded, I think we should cherish that we all speak the same language in aviation. That's a start. And we should have the same focus. It's all about cultivating a mindset, a warrior mindset as well with our young folks. And that's what they're doing here at Luke, and that's what they're doing at Shepherd. And like you said, I've met so many folks in my life that I started off with in Shepherd. Actually, the Norwegian Air Chief, I sat at the table with our common instructor in Shepherd, and we're still working together today. And I think we should really cherish that. And I think there should always be a balance as well between technical skills and cognitive skills, and we should be able to taper as well to personal needs. For example, I'm going through the transition course as we speak. How nice is that you can bring something to your hotel room, a throttle and a stick and a screen where I can use my time to be as good as I can be, and of course, our young folks will go through the program a lot quicker and they'll adapt a lot sooner than the older folks. But hey, that's really tapering to my needs. I can do it in my own time and become the best pilot I can possibly be. So I truly applaud you, Ajax, and your team, because it's a very professional organization, and I like it also that it's military folks and civilian folks working together. It's an impressive team. And hey, they got me within 3 weeks from flying the Viper a couple of weeks ago to flying the F-35 right now, and I've never felt uncomfortable. It's a well thought of system. So
I share that sentiment, sir. I mean, I got comfortable very, very quickly in the academics and the simulators because of the quality of the CIPs, the contract IPs, and the flight line IPs, and the technology that's available to students, either lieutenants or lieutenant generals at this organization. It's just mind blowing. There's so few things that you could potentially see in the jet that you cannot be shown in the simulators here, which absolutely positively gets students to a certain degree of comfort and familiarity in the jet, so they're not seeing things for the first time. It's just fantastic operation.
There's a word you said, sir, that I think is worth kind of discussing a little bit, and it's values. We share the same values with our allies and partners like the Netherlands. When you look at our competitors, they don't have shared values. If they have any allies or partners, it is purely transactional. There's no values-based relationship there, and that's a powerful thing. That's the foundation of our alliance, is based on values, freedom, prosperity, and that's really what it comes down to in the end. I don't know if you gentlemen had a chance to get over to the Titan while you're here?
Not yet.
Okay.
Fantastic facility. I loved it. First time I went in there on day one, I opened the door. I'm like, where did this come from and how can I get one? Somewhere in Ramstein. The facilities, the equipment, the staff over there that's available if you need to get workout kick-started, or the Titan is a full-up round. And I think it's so important for all students to prioritize taking care of themselves physically, because the body is a weapon system as well. And if the weapon system that is your body cannot keep up with the weapon system that is your jet, then the pilot's going to be the LIMFAC. And establishing good, healthy physical fitness regimens and routines early, it becomes a habit pattern the further you go in life.
Absolutely. That's the idea behind the Titan, and I definitely don't take any credit. I've used it every time I come back through Luke for a requalification, either in the F-16 or F-35. I go over there and I have the same exact impression. How in the world did we get this? And how can we get it everywhere, that we have fighter pilots, operators that are putting their body under a lot of stress, not just physically, cognitively as well. And so there's part of the Titan Arena that focuses on the cognitive aspect of what we do in the air. So it's really about the whole person. How do you maintain and maybe even improve upon the whole person who's ultimately in a very stressful, high-risk environment up there?
It's a matter of starting early, as we said before, but I think it's also a matter of training together at the earliest possible stages. So we learn our ways, we learn to appreciate our weapon systems, and we are able to put that into combat as well. I still remember one night when we were flying out in Kosovo and we had to attack a target which was heavily defended, and we needed support from a bunch of American Block 50 F-16s. I'd never seen the guys, I'd never spoken to those guys, but I'd flown with them in Red Flag, and I knew their procedures, and I knew how they were going to execute and where my attack should fit in with them. And that paid off tremendously that night, that we actually do things together as well. So it's the whole package, if you ask me. It's sharing the values, it's creating a warrior mindset that goes beyond borders. It's educating together, it's training together, it's fighting together. It's the whole deal.
I couldn't agree more, sir. And my perspective, in addition to everything you said, is that I don't think that training and integration and education should be done by accident. It needs to be deliberate, it needs to be thoughtful, it needs to be planned, which means, to your point, the earlier we start doing it or planning it, to provide opportunities and venues primarily through large-scale exercises, but sometimes small-scale exercises. Somebody has to accept the responsibility to host these exercises, get the conversation, get the planning going, and then there's that old saying, if you build it, they will come. But once somebody takes the lead and seizes the initiative, that it kind of has to start from there, because if nobody does that, I think sometimes our opportunities falter and sometimes languish. I'm sure you're aware we've got a big Ramstein Flag 24 exercise coming up this year. Details are still being ironed out, but they've already established that the focus of the exercise is going to be counter A2AD, so counter anti-access area denial, and integrated air and missile defense. So once we get all these partners and allies to participate, it's going to be a massive and very, very well run, and I think very beneficial exercise coming up at some point later this year.
Absolutely. Yeah, we're going to be hosting Ramstein Flag next year in the Netherlands, and I think that's the focus we need. You know, and again, if we let our majors and captains run with it, they'll make it work. And I think one of the big focus areas on interoperability is also the need to share, you know, information and be aware of the capabilities from partners. And of course, there's always things you have to deal with, but the more we can share amongst nations and the more we can fight as truly one team, that's gonna pay big dividends, I think, in future combat, whether that's in Europe or whether that's in the Indo-Pacific or anywhere around the world. So.
Absolutely. On the integration, interoperability exercise thing, I mean, you talked about the majors and captains running with it. I often find myself having discussions with the younger fighter pilots about the importance of that type of training, because it's painful. You know, it's much easier to just stay at home, execute your training plan, sleep in your own bed. It costs a little money to go somewhere. It's painful. There's a lot of logistics involved, but it pays off. But we remember those days when we were captains and, you know, you were being kind of forced to go do some.
I actually don't remember the days I was a captain. I'm sorry, you might have to edit that one out.
Yeah, but the value is so powerful of doing those things, again, early and often. On the information sharing, I know General Hecker is pushing really hard to absolutely break down any barriers that there are to sharing of information. I know General Wilsbach at Air Combat Command is doing the same. We have to break those barriers down where they still exist. I mean, risk, you know, the risk is at the bureaucratic level. And I think one of the fundamental truths about risk is that bureaucracies tend to deflect risk and aggregate it upon the operators. And when it's night one, we can't afford to not be sharing information leading up to night one. And that way, in that day, we crack open the codes. We also can't afford to wait until night one to do our integration training together. Because if you hadn't gone to that red flag, you might not have understood what the SEAD support plan was for your attack. And who knows if you make it back home that night. So we can't wait until the balloon goes up.
You're spot on, Ajax. One of General Hecker's 5 operational focus areas is intelligence and information sharing, because we, the United States, have been historically challenging partners and allies to work with when it comes to doing that. We've come a long way in the last, I would say, 4 to 5 years, I think, in certain areas, but we still have a lot of work to do, because if we're not sharing our most prized, precious intelligence and information and technologies, then we're just blocking our own kicks. And in a moment of crisis, when the balloon goes up, we're setting our operators up for failure, which to me is unacceptable.
And I think it has value in itself as well. You know, the alliances, whether that's NATO or other alliances. I think one of the biggest deterrents is the cohesion within these alliances to any future opponent that we might face. So there's definitely something for us to work on to make that cohesion as strong as possible in whatever alliance we're talking about. I think it's equally important that our folks on the ground are being able to be interoperable, that an American crew chief can serve as a Danish jet or a Dutch jet or whatever jet, that we can operate with Dutch jet from Norwegian air bases, and that we can fully work as one team and be completely integrated in whatever we do. So That requires education, so educating each other together. That requires training together, and that requires also practicing all our procedures on the ground together. So it shouldn't matter who services my jet or who bombs up my jet, as long as it's done in the correct way and we standardize procedures. We'll be working towards one fighting team, and it's an extremely strong team, if you ask me. And we're on our way to go there.
You're absolutely correct. Again, as always, sir. I think from what you've said, you probably agree with me, at least in Europe, we have cracked the code from a maintenance or a ground standpoint. We just now have to figure out as an alliance how to scope and scale that further across Europe to other partners and allies. And I'm confident we will get there.
It's a policy issue, you know, and it's not our maintainers, for example, that are hesitant to do this, to work on each other's jets, load up weapons. It's a policy issue that, just like the information sharing, those barriers need to go down. You want to do agile combat employment at scope and scale that's required in a great power competition, you need all options on the table. You need every base available. You need all of our allies and partners fully integrated, not just in the air, but on the ground.
Yeah, and we've, again, we kind of made progress via brute force, I guess is the way to describe it initially early on, because either policy or just those in the department of no that says we shouldn't be doing this. We got to the point where, at least from some of our maintainers, they adopted the mindset of, if it doesn't tell me I can't, then it means I can. Yep. An example of that is a couple months I was out in Poland visiting one of our geographically separated units, and I met an airman who was not a maintainer by trade, and he was certified to turn a C-130, a C-17, an F-16, and an F-35. All four of them. He just figured it out. He got certified, and that's an example of a, what do they call it now, mission-ready airman?
Right.
So there are examples of those types of airmen across, I would say, the alliance writ large, and certainly in the Air Force. But we just need to grow more of them.
And I agree with Ajax. I think, when things get really difficult, sometimes we hide behind policy as well. But I think policy is there to be cracked as well if it benefits our warfighters. And that's why I'm truly appreciative of what General Hacker and his team are doing within NATO, that they're tackling policy as well. Say, like, hey, if there's policy that's obstructing us from fighting future wars, then we should change them. And we had a great discussion a couple of months ago in Ramstein as well with General Hacker and his staff. And we're building a list right now with all kinds of stuff that our majors and captains are running into. And we put them on a piece of paper, and we're going to tackle them one by one to make sure we break down every barrier, like Ajax said, so we can fight as a team. And there's a tremendous amount of work being done right now at Ramstein. So we're very glad with the efforts you put into it with your team as well, Max. So we'll get there.
I'd like to see that list, because if there's anything I can do on this end of the pipeline to push and break down those barriers, it's something the team here is very focused on, and we can maybe help from our end.
Careful what you ask for, Ajax.
I got a guy. That's what he's working on. We've been talking about, it's not just in the air. There's a lot that goes into flying jets and putting the jets into the AOR. So a couple things come to mind. So we have our partner intelligence formal training unit. We actually train intelligence airmen from our partner nations to provide that information to the pilots, help them mission plan. So that is fully integrated with our partners here. The other thing, we have the 607th Air Control Squadron here, and they train tactical command and control airmen, and we also train partners there as well. So kind of the eyes in the sky for the fight, having that common training, common terminology, common tactics, techniques, and procedures, and again, having the experience of training together. Not just sharing the same manual, but doing the job together and growing up together. A couple of those examples I think are relevant to that. first of all, just this being on this panel or fireside chat with these gentlemen it's really an honor. It kind of represents a little bit of what happens here at Luke every day, which is really powerful. You know, having teammates like these gentlemen and the organizations they represent. You know, we're all single-seat fighter pilots, but we never go anywhere alone. And to be teamed up with 3rd Air Force, teamed up with the Royal Netherlands Air Force, is really powerful and really just an honor for me personally.
Yeah, it's been an honor for me to be here as well. I started Shepherd 30 years ago in 1994, and we came from different countries with different cultures and different manners. And after 1 year of flying and working together, we were all the same fighter pilots, no matter where you came from. And a couple of weeks ago, I hopped out the car here at Luke, and I had that same feeling, you know. In the US, I'm training with international partners. The focus is on the core business, flying jets, and being as good as you possibly can be. And that's what we see in the Netherlands as well, that our young lieutenants that come out of Luke, they are absolutely top-notch. They understand how our partners work and how they can interact with them. And that is the basis for future warfare in every aspect. So I'm very appreciative of what we do here. I'm very appreciative of the fact that we do it together. And like I said, civilians and military alike, it's one fighting team, and it creates a tremendous amount of air power for our respective air forces. So hats off to you, AJX.
The Thunderbolts from start to finish, every corner of this organization that I was lucky enough to observe, absolutely phenomenal. Professional, credible, competent, respectful. So I did not see anything here for the last 3 weeks that leads me to believe that anything shy of absolute greatness is going on this base inside of this organization. And like we talked about previously, so much goodness starts here. And I think, not to opine too much, but hopefully the instructor pilots take some solace knowing that the benefits of their work might not be reaped or seen for years down the road. But eventually, when it happens in the moment of need, I guarantee you that every student that comes through this organization is going to fall back on something that they learned here at Luke, whether it's stick and throttle, whether it's takeoff and landing, whether it's a tactic, whether it's partner integration. All the fantastic things that are going on here at Luke will pay massive dividends down the road, because you guys both know this. The United States will never go to war alone. Again, it never. We will fight alongside, with, by, and through our allies and our partners. Certainly in Europe with the NATO alliance, if something happens, we're all in it together. And that concept and those skills really, I think, is the epicenter and the genesis of a lot of them are here at Luke.